Kino's journey, the beautiful world, begins by showing a teenage boy named Kino talking to his motorbike named Hermes about his reasons for traveling around the world. Kino goes on an adventure because he wants to explore the outside world and recognize various human characters worldwide. He will continue to travel until he finds his identity and answers all his questions. The next day, Kino rode Hermes to their next destination. He met a man resting by the river with his horse on the way. After Kino approached him, that man told him that the city he was about to pass through was dangerous because the law does not prohibit murder in that country. That man intends to go to the city to live a more challenging life, and he also wants to meet a man named Regel, known as a legendary assassin. Kino, who was not interested in his chatter, immediately left him and continued his journey. In the afternoon, Kino arrived in the city and asked the gatekeeper to let him come in. Before allowing him in, the man guarding the gate warned him that killing in the city was allowed and would not result in any punishment. After he entered the city, Kino looked surprised because the city looked peaceful with the residents who were very friendly and open. Their buildings and houses were not fenced with iron, and very few security guards were there. Even after he arrived at the inn, he still couldn't believe that a city that legalized killing could have such a peaceful and serene life. After a long journey, Kino decided to rest, so he had enough energy to continue the journey. Every time he wants to sleep, he always holds a weapon in his hand as a form of vigilance for any threats that might attack him. In addition to the habit of holding a gun while sleeping, he also has a rule that he applies to himself, which is not to stay in a city for more than 3 days. The next morning, he did the same routine when he got up, to train his hand speed to pick up his weapon and pull the trigger. In the afternoon, Kino went around the city to see the atmosphere of the city and bought some food to stock up for the rest of the trip. While buying bread at a shop, he realizes that everyone in the city always equips themselves with a weapon to protect themselves. Even an old granny who looked frail had a gun in her bag. Not long after, an old man approached Kino and invited him to drink tea together while talking. After learning that Kino was a traveler who only stopped briefly in the city, he then invited Kino to stay longer in the city. However, Kino refused his invitation because he wanted to continue to travel and explore new places. Soon afterward, when Kino was about to leave the city, the man he had previously met called out to him. That man intended to rob Kino's motorbike and everything he owned while threatening that he would kill Kino if he didn't hand over the motorbike. When the young man took the gun in his pants, the residents started walking to their respective houses in unison without any intention of stopping him. Kino, who felt that there was an oddity behind the attitude of the residents, immediately hid behind Hermes to protect himself from being shot. However, before the man could shoot Kino, an arrow suddenly shot and pierced his arm until his gun fell. It turned out that the residents simultaneously exited the house while pointing their weapons at him. An old man who had previously had tea with Kino approached that man, explaining that even though the city did not prohibit killing, they were still against all forms of killing. To maintain order and peace in the city, all the residents will kill anyone who intends to kill other people. Before the old man killed that man, he introduced himself as Regel, whom that man had been looking for. The next day after Kino left the city, he again saw a young man resting by the river, and Kino approached him. The young man said he was on an adventure to find a peaceful city to live in because he had been forced to kill other people to survive. Hearing this, Kino advised him to go to the city he had just passed because it was a very peaceful and beautiful city. A few days later, Kino left for a city that he knew from a girl he met on a trip, where the girl said it was a wonderful city. But when he arrived in the city, he was instead forced by the gate guards to participate in an arena fight in the city. The guard says whoever wins the arena battle will be awarded citizenship and the right to create a new rule in the city. Originally, Kino had intended to kill all the gatekeepers and leave the city. However, after he found out that the girl he met the other day had become a victim of the cruelty of the citizens of this city, he intended to join the fight. After entering the city, Kino saw a very messy and neglected view of the city. Chaos in the city began to happen since the new king, who was very cruel, came to lead the city and created many new regulations for personal gain. After he arrived at the arena, Kino had to face the enemy of a powerful, burly man. Fortunately, he could easily defeat the burly man and all the enemies in the next round. Actually, Kino never killed his opponents in the arena and only made them unconscious or surrendered. That night, before the final match, he secretly prepared several bullets filled with liquid gunpowder for explosive power and high speed. The next day in the final match, Kino had to fight against a handsome young man named Shizu, who was always accompanied by a talking dog named Riku. In this battle, Kino had a little trouble defeating Shizu because he had good sword skills, making him could block all the bullets from Kino. Fortunately, Kino overcame this with his spare weapon and pointed it at Shizu. But instead of shooting him, Kino told him to lower his head so that Kino could shoot the bullet at the king's head. After successfully killing the king and defeating Shizu, Kino announced that he had created a new rule. He ordered the entire population to fight each other to the death, and whoever won the battle would become the next king. As a result, all the residents in the arena started attacking each other, and chaos started everywhere. Soon afterward, Kino rode away in Hermes and left the city amid the chaos. When he vented his anger by throwing stones at a river, Shizu and Riku approached him and thanked him for killing the king in his city. On another day, Kino visited a giant movable tube-shaped city. The immigration officer who greeted him explained that the city had to move because the power plant's reactor required them to keep moving. If the city stopped at one point for too long, the reactor would be overloaded and explode. Another reason the city moves is that its citizens can travel worldwide and enjoy the beautiful natural scenery. The next day, the mobile city was suddenly attacked by security forces from another city because they were close to crossing the border in their city. However, the mobile city could still stand firm when it had been shot by many cannonballs. Even the mobile city can still shoot lasers that can cut through other cities' walls so they can pass. The next day, the security forces from the city they were passing through were still launching attacks, and all those shots had the potential to damage the painting that was blinded by the children in the moving city. Knowing this, Kino volunteered to deal with the attack by the security forces alone using a sniper. With high accuracy, he can shoot and destroy the enemy troops' missile control devices so they cannot issue another attack. Thanks to his help, the children's paintings were saved, and when Kino left the moving city, the children in the town seemed to wave and thank him. The next day, Shizu and Kino traveled on a ship to a town called Ship Town. Upon arriving in the city, Shizu was greeted and given the choice of working with the low-paid residents or supervising the high-paying residents. He also chose to work with low-salary residents because he wanted to get to know them better. After being served a simple meal with sea fish as a side dish, Shizu was introduced to a guide girl named Tafana. The next day, she took him around to see all parts of the ship and see the activities of the residents on ship. On the 5th day in the city, he was shocked by a fairly large earthquake, but strangely, the Ship Town residents didn't budge as if they were used to it. Shizu also asked Tafana to take him to the source of the earthquake and found that the Ship Town had a leak. Shizu went to the ship's plan room to mark the area of the ship that was leaking so Tafana could report it to the Ship Town's leaders. But after he consulted with the elders, the elder asked him not to do anything because the Ship Town leaders already knew the case. However, the next day, Shizu insisted on meeting the ship leaders who lived in the tower. And because the ship's leaders ignored him, he intended to break into the tower using force. One of the men of the Ship Town's leader was sent to defeat him, and it turned out that person was Kino. Seeing Kino, who stopped fighting, the ship leaders thought that he had conspired with them and started attacking the two of them. As a result of that incident, they worked together to fight the leaders of the Ship Town together. After arriving at the top of the tower, Kino and Shizu prepared to attack the ship's leaders, but it turned out that all the leaders in the tower were ghosts. After Shizu landed the residents' ship on the mainland, he explained what really happened and advised the residents to stay on the mainland because their ship had been damaged. However, the ship's residents mocked him and flocked to each other to go to the ship, leaving Tafana alone. When Shizu approached Tafana and asked why she was silent, she suddenly stabbed him with a knife. It turned out that she was actually a child who had been abandoned by a pair of adventurers like Kino and Shizu. All the ship's residents often ostracized her alone, and the only people who accepted her were the ship's leaders. After hearing that, Shizu apologized to Tafana and decided to take her on an adventure together. He promised her he would never leave her alone under any circumstances, and she accepted the offer. A few days later, Kino talked to an old man who was reading a newspaper to ask about the legal system adopted by the city he was visiting at that time. The old man replied that the city adhered to a virtue point system, where everyone would get points if they did good and vice versa. They would get points deducted for doing evil. Everyone can earn good points by helping others, donating, or contributing to society. All points will be recorded on an identity card. If someone's virtue points are minus, they will be sentenced to prison. Hearing this, Kino asked how many points the old man already had, and he proudly replied that his value points were so high that he was able to kill someone without fear of being in prison. All this time, he had intended to commit one great crime, but he could not find a suitable target. At first, the old man intended to kill Kino, who was a foreigner. However, he immediately canceled his intention after seeing Kino was ready to pull the trigger of his gun. In the afternoon, when the old man was about to return to his home, a mother with her baby approached and asked him to bless her baby. His evil intentions reappeared, but after contemplating it for a long time, he decided to undo his intentions and whispered to the baby so that he would not become a person like him. After that, Kino went to a city where he heard from his teacher, who once gave him a gun. His teacher said that the city would give very good memories and it was difficult for adventurers to forget the memories of that city. Kino, who felt interested in visiting the city, immediately rushed there to see what a beautiful city was like. A few days later, Kino left the city without being able to remember what he had experienced there. Hermes then explained that when he entered the city, Kino had agreed to an order to erase all of his memories when he was there using some kind of drug. After that, when Kino opened the envelope given by the gatekeeper, he saw a picture when he was gathering with the townspeople and was sure that he had had a very beautiful day. The next day, Kino went to a town rumored to be less friendly to newcomers. Some people say that they close shop when travelers want to buy something, to mention that the entrance fee to the city is quite expensive. However, he was increasingly interested in knowing what the city was like and finding out if it was really bad or just a rumor. When Kino arrived in front of the city gates, the guards asked him how long he would stay in the city. He replied that he would stay in the city for 2 days, and the guards seemed happy to hear that answer, so they immediately invited him to come in. After the city gates were opened, Kino was greeted by all the townspeople with a very friendly and warm smile. He asked where he could get a cheap place to stay in the city, and a little girl named Sakura offered him a cheap hotel managed by her parents. Hearing the offer, Kino immediately agreed and asked to be escorted to the hotel. After arriving at the hotel, Sakura's parents greeted him in the lobby and invited him to a spacious and luxurious room. After placing his things, Sakura guides Kino to go around the city and see the activities of the townspeople. After that, Kino stopped by a gun shop to repair his damaged pistol, and when the shop owner saw his revolver, he seemed to recognize the original owner of the gun. After that, Sakura invited him to go see a theater performance held by the townspeople to tell about the history of the city's founding. During the show, the locals greeted him again in a friendly manner and seemed happy that he was enjoying the show. The next day, Kino went to the gun shop to pick up the weapons he had left yesterday. However, when he was about to pay, the shop owner said all weapon repair fees were free. It turns out that the owner of the weapon shop owner is an adventure friend of his teacher named Shisho, and they used to travel to various cities together. Shisho's colleague named Aibo then gave Kino a revolver that he always carried when he was on adventures. Aibo realized he had no chance to travel and use the weapon, considering his old age and weakening physicality. Therefore, he decided to give the weapon to Kino so that he could use the weapon well, and Kino happily accepted the gift. That night, when Kino told Sakura about his adventure story, Sakura looked enthusiastic and interested in his story. But when her parents approached her and said she could go with Kino for an adventure, Sakura turned down the offer. With a smile, she said that she wanted to be with her parents and continue her parents' business. Turned out, Sakura secretly had other reasons that made her decide to stay in the city. The next day, Sakura took Kino to see the wedding of a couple who looked very young. When the bride threw flowers, he managed to catch some flowers and gave them to her. In the afternoon, the gatekeeper politely picked up Kino and asked him to leave the city immediately. Before he left town, the residents gathered to greet and thank him for visiting their town. Sakura's mother also gave 2 packs of lunch to Kino as a thank you and told him to eat lunch tomorrow. The night after Kino left the city, he rested in a forest near the city. And in the middle of the night, he suddenly heard a huge roar from the direction of the city he had just visited. It turned out that there had been a volcanic eruption whose magma instantly hit the entire city and killed all its residents. Seeing all of that from the top of the hill, Kino could only remain silent and couldn't do much to help them. The next morning, Kino opened the lunchbox previously given by Sakura's mother, and in the bag, he found a letter from all the city residents. In the letter, the residents knew that a catastrophic volcanic eruption was coming, but they decided to stay in the city because they loved it very much and did not know how to survive outside. And because Kino was the last traveler to visit their city, they deliberately gave him special treatment so that their city would always be remembered well by adventurers. Sakura knew the fact about the disaster that would happen in the city. That was why she didn't go with Kino. She wanted to stay with her parents until the last moment. Therefore, she also put a flower in the lunch bag because she knew that she would not be able to keep the flower. Knowing all that, Kino felt very sad as he tightly held the last thing she gave him. After all this time, we have seen the cities visited by Kino. As part of the closing, we will be told about the city where Kino comes from and who he really is. Several years earlier, Kino was a shy girl named Bella who lived in a small town. One day, a young man named Kino came to the city and asked about the inn. After that, Bella took him to the inn managed by her parents. The next morning, she woke up from sleep after hearing the sound of a hammer from him, who was repairing his motorbike. The curious Bella approached Kino and started asking about the job he had. He replied that his job was to be a traveler or adventurer because it was so fun. Hearing that answer, Bella responded that what he did was not a job because a real job is something that is not fun and requires hard work. The reason behind her words and thoughts comes from the social system implemented in her city. In the city, every child aged 12 and over is considered an adult and is required to work. Every child who has reached the age of 12 will undergo special surgery on their brain to act mature and not childish. At that time, Bella was still not even 12 years old, but children were already being indoctrinated about the system at a young age. After Kino heard about the system from Bella, he then explained what maturity is, and the true meaning of hard work, and those words directly affected her perspective. After that, they told each other about their respective hobbies, where Kino likes to travel to beautiful places while Bella likes to sing. That night, Bella couldn't sleep because she remembered everything Kino had said. Ultimately, she dared to ask her parents to let her not undergo brain surgery. This is because she wants to be herself into adulthood and doesn't want to lose all her childhood memories. Hearing Bella's words, her father immediately raged and scolded Kino for influencing Bella. Kino just stayed silent without saying anything and said goodbye to them because he didn't want to get into big trouble. However, his intention to leave was immediately stopped when he saw her father holding a knife and intending to kill Bella. When her father was about to stab Bella with the knife, Kino quickly ran to protect her with his body. Unfortunately, it killed him in front of her, and Bella, who was in shock, could only sit limply. Shortly after that, Bella suddenly heard the sound of Kino's motorbike named Hermes, and it asked her to leave the place. She immediately got on the motorbike and left the city safely after getting past the gate guards. Since then, she changed her name to Kino and looked like a boy to protect herself from harm. She also decided to become a traveler like the adult Kino who had previously saved her from death and began to explore all over the world. The anime closes with Kino lying on a red flower field with Hermes, while reminiscing about the memories of when he met Hermes for the first time. The anime ends. This anime teaches us a lot about people and the meaning of life, and also, maturity is not about how much age we have, but how much experience we have.